Islam, love, truth, peace, freedom, justice, and above all light. I am your host, Elias. This is the Moorish Lodge Supernal, and I'm speaking directly to you. This is an oral initiation. Today's topic will be the great work of spiritual unfoldment and the destiny of man. And we'll be covering multiple topics, flitting all over, but the goal is not necessarily to educate, but more to illuminate by osmosis. So I'll be touching on multiple topics and perhaps giving references, but mainly you're just supposed to soak in this message and use it to begin your quest, a quest that's truly already begun. It was begun ages past in a realm far superior to this one in vibration. You've heard of the mythic creation and fall of man as outlined in chapter 1 of the Circle 7, also as outlined in the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life mysteries, and I'll be covering it in brief here. Man was originated as a thought of the Most High. The body of man is the body of the Tree of Life, or the body of creation itself. The universal man now, the Adam Kadmon, the perfected man in his original state of bliss, was the original thought, and all of creation had being within him. But man descended and he fell into a fleshly state, into a gross state. By so falling, he lost harmony with the higher planes, took upon himself a body of flesh, and created the shadow known as the ego, or known as the lower self, and all the carnal propensities that go with that. In his higher self, his higher consciousness, his harmony with the all of life, with the all of universal consciousness, with the all of love and infinite wisdom, was hidden behind a veil. So now man wanders about in darkness and ignorance of his true nature. And so above the temple in Egypt was written, "Know thyself." And that creed, that edict, "Know thyself," is as ancient as time itself, because the original sin was ignorance. And ignorance is the cause of all the ills of man. And wisdom itself is the fountain of youth, the fountain of life. It is the eternal elixir. With such knowledge, man is able to transmute himself from the rough ashlar into the philosopher's stone and thus redeem himself. With wisdom, man is able to transmute his lower nature into a higher vibration, into pure light, and thus ascend back into his natural place on the higher realms of life, and take up his responsibility as the vicegerent, or the custodian of creation, and aid those lower beings to also reach the highest stage of their own evolution. But man, with his ego and his pride, fell into a low density, third density, carnal state just to satisfy his own base desires, and thus arose the need for man's redemption. This process of redemption is termed alchemically the great work, which is the work of subduing the lower nature and transmuting it into the higher self, basically, transmuting darkness into light, unfolding all of the latent faculties of man so that he may once again regain his godhood. Not a carnal godhood, like the pseudo-godhood of these men who think only of this physical world, but a godhood of love, a love that looks over all of creation and unifies it with one central purpose: to grow and unfold beyond infinity. So man has fallen into sin, the sin of ignorance, and he's looking for blessedness. So basically, man is composed of three parts. There's the higher self, which is of the self-same nature as the Most High Creator God, or of the great unseen spirit that overshadows all creation, that is within all of creation, but is not within all of creation, so to speak. All of creation flows from him and is of him, but his nature is not contained within creation, so to speak. You can think of the Most High as being a circle whose circumference is nowhere and whose point is everywhere. Infinity, infinite consciousness, infinite power, wisdom, and love permeating all, but man in his carnal self perceives it not. And so because man lost harmony with the higher planes, the necessity for his redemption arose, and so down from heaven, down from those higher planes, shone a beacon of light, and this light is termed variably the Sirat al-Mustaqim, or the straight way, also the eternal gospel, or the divine instructions, or the edict, know thyself, or the mystery tradition. In Egypt, it's called the Shataut or Shatautu Neter, or the divine instructions of the Neter, of God, of the Creator. And by studying and unfolding into this doctrine, man is able to transmute himself into the higher planes, which is really the great work of creation. Enlightenment. And I want to give you a symbol. The eye of Heru, or the Ujet, which is the Egyptian term for the eye of Heru, or the quintessence. It symbolizes divine consciousness, or the arrival at divine enlightenment. When man's divine mind potential, the seed that fell down with him to this lower plane, also the pineal gland, when it becomes awakened again and regains consciousness of everything, and man's consciousness unfolds to enfold everything. And it transmutes his lower self into a vessel that can house the transcendent light coming from above. And this divine consciousness, or enlightenment, is termed in the Egyptian mystery system Nehast. Nehast. I'm going to read a short portion. It says, the ultimate purpose of all traditions of Shatautu Neter, or of the eternal mystery tradition, or the eternal wisdom system, is to attain spiritual awakening or enlightenment, termed Nehast, symbolized by the eye of Heru, or the Ujat. Nehast means to wake up, to awaken to the higher existence. This is a mystical movement of self-discovery in union with the supreme divine, framed as a hidden, deeper existence of life, discussed in various sections of the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead. For example, where it said, Nuk pa neter ah neter uah asha ren. In English, I am that same God, the Supreme One, who has myriad of mysterious names. The goal of all Netarian disciplines is to discover the meaning of who am I, to unravel the mysteries of life, and to fathom the depths of eternity and infinity. This is the task of all human beings, and it is to be accomplished in this very lifetime. This can be done by learning the ways of the Neteru, or the gods, emulating them to finally become like them, enlightened beings, walking the earth as giants and accomplishing great deeds, such as the creation of the universe. And so now we go to one of the teachings of Thoth, as above, so below, as below, so above, as above, so below, as below, so above. The macrocosm is mirrored in the microcosm. The great universe is mirrored in the micro or miniature universe, which is your own physical body, your own physical self. So you yourself are the body of God, and God exists within you as a seed of divine light. And go into our circle 7, where one of the great Christ heroes, Yeshua, speaks with the silent brotherhood, or the Egyptian brotherhood, after his having demonstrated the might of man, the potential of man. I'm going to read. This is page 31 of the Circle 7 Quran. Bear with me. Excuse me, this is actually page 27 of the Circle 7. The priests of Heliopolis were in their temple and met to celebrate the resurrection of their brother Nazarite, Yeshua. They knew that he had risen from the dead. The Nazarite appeared and stood upon a sacred pedestal on which no man had ever stood. This was an honor that had been reserved for him who first would demonstrate the resurrection of the dead. When Yeshua stood upon the sacred pedestal, the Master stood and said, "All hail!" The great bells of the temple rang, and all the temple was ablaze with light. And Yeshua said, "All honor to the masters of this temple of the sun. In flesh of man there is the essence of the resurrection of the dead. This essence, quickened by the holy breath, by universal or infinite consciousness, infinite wisdom, the infinite genius, basically, is what the holy breath symbolizes. This essence, quickened by the holy breath, will raise the substance of the body to higher tone, and make it like the substances of the bodies of the planes above, which human eyes cannot behold. There is a holy ministry in death. The essence of the body cannot be quickened by the holy breath until the fixed is solved. The body must disintegrate, and this is death. And then, upon these pliant substances, the Most High breathes, just as he breathed upon the chaos of the deep when the worlds were formed. And life springs forth from death. The carnal form is changed to form divine. The will of man makes possible the action of the holy breath. When will of man and will of the Most High are one, the resurrection is a fact. In this we have the chemistry of mortal life, the ministry of death, the mystery of deific life. My human form was wholly given to bring my will to tune with the deific will. When this was done, my earth tasks all were done. Here it states that the ultimate goal of man on the earth plane is to transmute himself into a divine man, to redeem himself. Such redemption is called in alchemy transmutation, or the process by which the philosopher's stone is created. And now the philosopher's stone itself is actually your own pineal gland, which is also called in certain mythologies Lucifer, or the light bringer. So when man fell, when he fell into carnal density, and when he was imprisoned by his own ego, by his own demon, his own lower self that he created, which is called in some systems Yaldabaoth, or the evil creator god frequency of matter and time, a being birthed forth by man's own iniquity, then a ray of light descends also with him, and it creates a stone called the Graal, or the Holy Grail in some systems. And that stone is proof of man's divine nature, which is that pineal gland, which is the point inside of the circle. And so when you see Yeshua with the crown of light circling his head, or when you see Heru with the crown of light, or when you see any of the Christ heroes with the crown of light, you are actually seeing their divinely illuminated pineal gland. And so we're going to move systems and we're going to go to the chakras, because the number 7 is the divine number of the divinely arisen man. It's the number of perfected man, man who has made himself, who has purified himself and has made himself a fit vessel for the light. And so also running up and down your spine, you have 7 chakras, which correspond to 7 endocrine glands or organs in your body. The highest is the pineal gland. The lowest is in the root of your spine. And so the highest vibration is at the crown chakra, at the highest level, and the lowest vibration is pulsating at the base of your spine, where sleeps the serpent Kundalini. And so it must be arisen and woken, but also arising, because each of the chakras are also portals. They're vortexes of energy that are closed, but when you start opening them, then the forces start awakening. And so at the lowest level is where all the fear and doubt and carnal animal energy actually dwells and pulsates in man. In the second chakra, moving up the spine, which is situated in the sexual organs, which corresponds to the testes, or the sexual organs of the female, which is where all of your carnal sexual energy comes from. And then you go higher and you have your stomach, which is actually where the Egyptians believed that thought actually arises from, the solar plexus or the lower sun, right? And so these are the three components of the lower man, or the lower self. And most of man's energy at this present time is situated in these lower 3 chakras, right? And then you have the upper 3 chakras, the throat chakra, from whence issues the word, the divine word of creation. Also the divine word of the Hierophant, of the Creator, or God and man, the vibrating from Da'af, the Da'af chakra, the dark sun, and then you rise even higher, and then you have the pituitary gland, or the third eye chakra in that very area, and then you rise even higher, and then you have the fully illuminated pineal gland in the divine halo. So when we're talking about the fall of man, we're also talking about man's consciousness falling from Keter, or from dealing with the tree of life, falling from the higher plane where sits the Fez on the top of divine man, down to the root chakra, the lightning flash descending and hitting the plane of Malkuth, or the lowest chakra, and where it sleeps. And you have to uncoil the dragon and rise it up the spine, climbing Jacob's ladder up to the attic, and illuminating that third eye, which will then shoot forth and then illuminate the rest of the body. So the process that we're talking about is the process of regeneration. And we talked previously in one of our previous lessons about initiation. In ancient times, the term initiation is synonymous with regeneration. So this process, we're trying to regenerate our body, our mind, and our soul, that they may receive the eternal spirit. The spirit never changes. The spirit is infinite and perfect. Your spirit, that divine spark inside of you, is perfect. But your body and your mind and your soul have fallen to a low state. They're stuck in a low density. And it's mainly the work of carnal influences. We talked previously about Yaldabaoth, the evil creator God frequency. Now that's symbolized in the microcosm as your lower self, or your own ego. This desire to receive for the self alone. you know? And it mainly works through the body. All carnal desire is basically raised from the body. So we're going to read also in the Circle 7 again, going to chapter 3, where Elihu is educating the mothers of John the Harbinger, or the bringer of purity, who baptizes with water, and Yeshua, divine love in the flesh, who baptizes with fire and Holy Spirit. So it says, blessed are the pure in heart, for they will love and not demand love in return. They will not do to other men what they would not have other men do unto them. A clear edict to purify your heart. Out of the heart are the issues of life. What a man thinketh in his heart, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So the heart is talking about the seat of the emotions, but also your innermost self, that silent part inside of you from whence your desires arise. That has to be first to be purified, and you have to get that selfish carnal nature out of it. Noble Drew Ali talked about the 4 devils that tear down society. And these 4 devils are the henchmen, so to speak, or the sons of the lower self. That's envy, greed, lust, and jealousy, and hatred as well, which is the 5th devil. And so now we're dealing with the 2 selves. There are 2 selves, the higher self and the lower self. The higher self is human spirit, clothed with soul, made in the form of Allah, or the universal, unseen, unknown God. The lower self, the carnal self, the body of desires, is a reflection of higher self, distorted by the murky ethers of the flesh. The lower self is an illusion and will pass away. The higher self is Allah in man and will not pass away. So I'm going to give another symbol to you, which is the symbol of the 6-pointed star, the hex alpha, or the shield of David. So you have 2 triangles. There's the upward pointing triangle representing the divine spirit or the divine realm or the higher self or truth. And then you have the lower self, which is the downward pointing triangle, which is the realms of matter, the realms of illusion, the realms of falsehood, the lower realms wherein man is shackled now. So you have the spirit pointing upward and matter pointing downward. And then you might also have a point in the center of these 2, which is your own soul, or the council chamber, wherein the higher self and the lower self meet, where Heru and Set, or Christ consciousness and the ego, face off in duel for who will reign. They ultimately have to be joined into perfect harmony. But imagine the sun shining off of the water, shining off of the ocean. And so the sun is perfect in the sky. The light is clear. It's pure. But shining off of the water, it's a reflection, it's an illusion, and any breeze can ripple the waves and distort it. It's not real. We live in a world of falsity, the lower realms, the illusory planes. And we have to regain our harmony, our sync with those higher planes. And so the mythic story of the fall of man is also the story, I think it's represented in one of Aesop's fables, or one of the Greek legends, or something about this egoic character. His name escapes me, who basically he's very beautiful, and he peers into the water he's walking on his way. He peers into the pond, and he's enamored with his own reflection in the pond. And he thinks that a person that he might meet and speak with and converse with and have intercourse with. And so he's staring so deeply that he falls into the pond and distorts the image, and he becomes a sea monster inside of the pond. And now he's lost in illusion, lost in the illusion of his own grandeur. That's what the ego is. It's an illusion. It's a reflection. It's not real. It's the same thing as man looking for a God outside of himself, when really that's only a reflection of his own ideal. In the Circle 7, it also says, man's ideal is his God. Man's God today, tomorrow is not God. And if man would know the truth, he must himself become the truth. So now we're going to talk about, I'm going to read through just the remainder of chapter 3, dealing with the two selves, the higher self and the lower self. Because when we're talking about the great work, we're ultimately talking about exalting the higher self up and transmuting the lower self into the higher self, transmuting darkness into light, transmuting our carnal propensities and our lower desires into purified versions of themselves that will serve all of creation and also serve the exaltation of that pure divine part inside of us. So it says, the lower self is an illusion and will pass away. The higher self is Allah in man and will not pass away. The higher self is the embodiment of truth. The lower self is truth reversed, and so is falsehood manifest. The higher self is justice, mercy, love, and right. The lower self is what the higher self is not, namely inharmony, meanness or grossness, low vibration, fear, and wrong. The lower self breeds hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms. The higher self is mother of the virtues and the harmonies of life. We're going to skip down. It says here, this is the edict. Know thyself. Stay on the Sirat al-Mustaqim, the straight way. And that's symbolized by the tree of life diagram, the Kabbalistic tree of life diagram, which is from the earth plane or Malkuth upward into the astral or the subtle plane or the subconscious dream plane, which is Yesod. And then we have two forces tugging on each side. We have the plane of our desires or the plane of our emotions, which is Netzach. And we also, or the plane of nature and passions, etc. And we have the plane of rationality and reason and intellectualism, which is another demon that needs to be conquered in man, because intellectualism for its own sake is dead. It needs to serve a higher purpose. That's represented by Hod or Had on the left hand side. So you have to travel that middle way, the straight way, the Sirat al-Mustaqim, going upward, dealing with the number 37. And go deal with Blackbeard Mirage's page, where he goes deep on the mystery of the number 37. And so you stay in between. You're staying in the straight path, the middle way, and you travel upward into Tiferet, which is actually representing your higher self or your soul or the balancing point, that light that's within yourself. But you can't even rest there. Once you find that inner light, you have to go even deeper, because you're not just trying to find your. You have to go beyond your personal self into union with the universal self. Let's say it like that, which is represented by Keter, and in a higher sense represented by Ein Sof, or the Most High, or symbolizing Allah, or Asar, which is also termed Osiris in the Greek mythology. So I'm just going to read on here, and then we're going to skip around. Oh, if you would ask me what to study, I would say yourselves. And when you well have studied them, and then would ask me what to study next, I would reply, yourselves, higher and lower. He who knows well his lower self knows the illusions of the world, knows of the things that pass away. And he who knows his higher self knows Allah, knows well the things that cannot pass away. And we're going to skip to the end. So it says, the only devil from which man must be redeemed is self, the lower self. If man would find his devil, he must look within. His name is self. If man would find his savior, he must look within. And when the demon self has been dethroned, the savior, Love will be exalted to the throne of power. The David of the light is purity, who slays the strong Goliath of the dark and seats the Savior, love, upon the throne. So it's basically a war inside of yourself between two polarities, the higher self and the lower self. One is the pure truth, one is the falsehood. We are trapped in the falsehood. And so it's necessary for man in his ascent to polarize himself with his higher nature. And that's also, go also look up the Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, sometimes just called the Emerald Tablet, where it talks about separating the fire from the earth, separating the spirit from the flesh, separating the higher self from the lower self, rising up to heaven, ascending into that highest plane, into Keter, into the divine transcendent light of your own divine spark, then descending back to Malkut, which is your physical body, and thereby transmuting it. And that's when you create the immortal body. The immortal body. It's sometimes called the Virna, which is basically the diamond body. The diamond body and the diamond soul united eternally with the divine spirit of your own self. And that's the mythology when they talk about Yeshua arising from the tomb, rising from the tomb after his 3 days, purifying the lower self, the higher self, and in the meeting ground, which is the soul or the inner self. And after 3 days, he arises from the tomb, and they can't find his body. So what happened to his body is the question. Well, his body, he took it with him to the higher realms, because he had transmuted it. He had made it an immortal instrument for his will. So death need not conquer man once he masters himself, which brings us to the term Islam. Now, Islam means peace. It also symbolizes the divine human family, mother and son. But Islam also has an esoteric meaning, or an occult meaning, too. In fact, it's I self Lord and Master, and more commonly, I self law am Master. Meaning that when man finds his true identity, the law of the universe, the universal law of power, wisdom, and love, and when he identifies with that, he becomes master of all the planes. He indeed becomes one with all the planes and reclaims his status as a divinely perfected man, who is indeed universal consciousness, one with the All-Father, one with Allah. And that is kind of the destiny of man. That's the journey, that's the quest that we're on. It's called the great work because many lifetimes are spent in perfecting self. But I'll let you in on a secret. The Moors, the Moorish American, the person of melanated descent who came from the stars, the children of the sun, the children of Sirius, the children of the heavens, the true children of the Most High, this is your destiny. The higher planes call to you. As melanated people, we've been off the path for quite a while. We were put into the dark ages for our own iniquity. But the time has come for the light to return. Time has come for us to return to the light. And so say with me this prayer, more light. And let that light transmute you, body, mind, and soul. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. We are building the temple of transcendent light. And let that be all for now. Peace and light.